turn in with a chance. What a big break! Has done it! It is stunning!
Hey everybody, welcome in and thank you for joining us as we talk about our new project that's coming up called Champagne Charlie. I'm super excited to introduce you guys. By the way, my name is John. I'm the community director for Fleamint and super excited to introduce you to our panel today as well as our guests. So if we could just do a real quick introduction, James, if you could just introduce yourself.
Sure, James Gillingham, CEO of Fleamint, ex-professional football player, turned into serial entrepreneur.
Awesome. And we also have Guy Shirtliff here. If you can introduce yourself and say, what you're doing here.
Hi, John. Yeah, Guy Shirtliff, founder of Singapore Family Office and previously an investor involved in horse racing since I've been 16, so about 25 years. Have horses in Singapore, South Africa, and Australia, involved in syndication and the rest. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Awesome. Super excited to get into it. Before we do, James, if you can just remind people, what is the mission and vision of Fleamint?
So it's basically to tokenize and create real world opportunity, but bring that into cryptocurrency. So tokenizing real world assets, goods and services. And this is our first kind of move into doing that, which is super exciting for everybody involved.
Awesome. Dude, I'm super excited to get into it. This is our pilot project right now. And people have been asking, hey, how do we use Fleamint? What's good about Fleamint? And so really excited to get into it. So without further ado, let's get into it. So James, if you can get into what is Champagne Charlie? What is it?
So Champagne Charlie is essentially a horse syndicate where we're going to be raising a bunch of cash. We then have a network through Guy, a network of trainers, a network of purchasers that essentially are able to spot and be able to purchase great horses. We've got a very good trainer here, Ricardo, in which I've met a number of times. So he's going to be training the horse. So the trainer's already been identified. And then we're going to be racing the horses and then distributing the winnings amongst the NFT holders. So anyone holding NFTs and basically will be receiving real world returns from when our stable of horses win, basically.
Wow. So basically you're saying that it's the people investing into NFTs is going to base their ROI, their returns on their investment based on real world assets and the revenue generated outside of DeFi.
Correct. Yeah. So it's attached to a real world being or horse, right? An animal that's being trained every single day. And then we enter it into certain races, depending on the grades that it's in, as grade 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, etc. And then assuming that it's able to win in Singapore, and there are some pretty substantial prizes in Singapore. There's $1 million race, which one of Guy's horses raced in a few weeks ago. And then assuming that it's able to go through those grades, then obviously it can then fly across the region. It can go to Hong Kong and then go to Dubai, where the prize money is much greater. And then obviously the winnings become greater, so that any individual holding the NFT part owns the horse and also receives income from when the horse not only wins, but is also placed. So if it comes second or third, there will also be money being distributed.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the high level on that. And actually on that point, I actually want to bring Guy back in and kind of basically talk about what is horse syndication and, why does it make sense? Can you just speak into that?
Yeah, sure. Happy to help. So horse syndication it's fractionalization of horse ownership. So historically, you would find one or two people sharing a horse in partnership. But what syndication does is it takes away all the administrative issues from the eventual owners and fractionalizes into a lot smaller pieces. So you can get thousands or hundreds of owners in a single horse, typically it's 10 to 20, and you all share costs and winnings, and that kind of lowers the barriers to entry for your every man in the street, like sort of person, and opens it up to a much broader market. Yeah.
Awesome. Wow. Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. Like, something that I know most people have a hard time understanding about horse ownership, especially for those who are new to this. I'm sure many people is the first time hearing about horse syndication. I know for me, when I first got introduced, I was like, I don't understand what this is until like, sat me down and then when I started hearing it, I was like, oh, okay. So basically it makes it so it's doable and reachable for people who don't have like tens of thousands of dollars to be able to do this on their own, but makes it more accessible for those who say, let's say, for instance, in our program, right? So whereas they might have a couple of $1,000s and say, hey, I want to invest into something like this. Yeah. So now just a little bit more insight and more questions. So what does it all involve normally with being a owner or even a part owner through the syndication? What does that entail per se?
So racing, I mean, as an owner, you get to watch the races live, get feedback from your trainers, from the jockeys. I mean, you can bet on your own horses, understand, get a little bit of an inside scoop if you can, and judge the betting for yourself. But yeah, being part of a group that owns a horse is a lot more fun if you go racing with a group of people and you all have a share in it. You celebrate the winnings together. Where if you're a solo owner, it's kind of all the risk is on you. You're celebrating by yourself, maybe with some mates, but it's much more fun in a group, and having a bigger spread of horses through syndication, you can spread your risk and increase the probability of hitting those group winners.
Okay. Yeah, it's actually talking about winning and getting winnings and such. This is the key point I think that most folks need to understand. Even myself, I had to really think this through. Was what is the key difference between profiting as an owner versus someone who's betting on a horse race itself? Well, what's a key differences?
Okay, so generally each race you go, there's different divisions and we have different amounts of prize money. So I mean, you mentioned the $1 million race earlier. That's a group one. That's kind of the top of the pops. That when you race for the stakes, the prize, it gets divided up between first, second, third, and fourth place. So no matter where you run, you're earning a little bit, and that kind of covers the expenses of training and some of the purchase cost or travel. Betting on the race, so there's many different races, and in your typical race, you have between 10 to 16 horses, and there's based on the form of the horse, there's different pricing, like betting of who's going to win the race. And there's many factors that influence that, like weather, jockey, the draw, and yeah, you can bet through private betting sites or wherever on a tote or whatever. You can have a bet on your own horse, and you can win from the stakes. So often I'll do that. You just have a token bet for fun on your horse, and the odds really range. Like I mean, last week, Saturday, we had a horse that fortunately won. He was second or third favorite. He was 4-1, which was like quite a nice addition, almost winning more than the stakes on the betting.
Wow. Okay. So there are definitely pros and cons to both sides. But in your experience, I guess what I would like to hear is as an owner side. Now that we're talking about the ownership, is that something that seems to make a lot of sense? Should that make a lot of sense for those who are able to own a horse, even in a fractional manner? Does that make more sense in terms of like versus betting? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, the ownership kind of comes back to what James mentioned earlier, like when he got into it from kind of betting off going down and having small bets, but your passion grows for it. And as you get older, they call it the sport of kings, and almost becomes like your pet, and you really get attached to your horse, and it's quite fun. There's a much better, like I prefer it if my horse wins. Sometimes I don't even want to bet. So I'd rather just have them win and enjoy the winning feeling. I mean, it's one of the best feelings when they do win.
Gotcha. That's amazing. In fact, that's one of the things I know as something that I know James will get into a little bit later is, kind of our strategy of like, hey, like what are the money that we're raising is going to be used for, and how we're going to strategize, and giving the best probability, right, of for our horse to win, right, whatever place it is. At the end of the day, like you're saying, Guy, if it definitely is a different feeling between saying, hey, I bet on this horse and I won the money, versus it's my horse. It's my horse and it's won. You want to cheer for it. So definitely that is something that is something to look forward to. Awesome. Now, just one last thing. This is a fun section. Is there any amenities that even if you're a fractional horse owner, like that owners can enjoy, as part of a syndicate?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, once you become an owner, you generally get invited to the owner's suites on race days. When the horse wins, you get to go down to the parade ring and lead them in, and into the champagne room. Typically, even before the race, you get to go meet the jockey and the trainer and have those inside discussions of tactics and how the race is going to pan out. And then the dreams, you also get to go visit the stables and actually see the horses work. So as an owner, you get a lot closer to the horse and more to the inside scoop on what's happening.
Gotcha. Well, that's amazing. Well, Guy, thank you so much for that insight on horse syndication. I know this is a matter of education, because we as we're speaking to our audience, to the DeFi crowd, I'm sure there's many who know horse syndication, but I know there's also many people who never heard of this ever before, myself included, before this project. So, it's very insightful with your expertise. So I appreciate that. So this next section, guys, thank you so much, Guy. We'll bring it back on when we have a couple more other questions. But another section that I wanted guys to just kind of get into the nitty gritty of things and saying, hey, so with all that information said, making sense of like, this is what horse syndication is, what we're going to plan to do with it, exactly what is going to happen. How do I get into this project, right? So let me go ahead and show that for you guys. So as we see here we go. There is going to be basically 2,000 NFTs that we're going to be selling. And for the 2,000 NFTs, each of them are going to cost $1,200 each. The way that it's going to work is basically whatever NFTs are purchased, however much is purchased, right? After the sale is closed, which, by the way, it's James is going to reiterate at the end, but it's going to be from June 5th to June 30th. We're going to have this sale going on, and when it's closed, whatever NFT sold, that's where the winnings that potential winnings that come in are going to be split between the NFT holders. Okay, and then just so you understand, by the way, it is $1,200, but we're going to have a Discord / community invitation campaign that's for the top 100 people who are going to get on board, be able to invite and make sure that invite is confirmed. I'll go through that in our onboarding process later on. That those folks, those top 100, will be whitelisted for a discount on the NFT. Instead of being $1,200, it'd be $1,000. So you get a $200 discount on that NFT. But those are for the top 100 people who are basically going to be our evangelists, saying, hey, you want to invite folks, you believe in the project, and you want other people to come and be part of the community, as well as start looking into investing, not only in Champagne Charlie, but also in the future too. There's going to be more projects lined up. But for specifically this one, that's the campaign we're going to have. More details to be found later. And then, of course, many of you guys are wondering, so what is the split on the profit? Okay. It's going to be 80% of the winnings is going to go to NFT holders, and then 20% goes to the project, which that 20% is going to include, staffing that we need to hire, and also for the platform to continue to do what it's doing, as well as, any kind of maintenance, as well as, long-term training, as well as, travel expenses, taking care of the horse, all that stuff. So, but you guys, the NFT holders, will get 80% of those winnings. Okay. And then the last thing here is we're going to go back to you, James, as I wanted to hear from you, and I'm sure everyone else is wondering, with the money that's being raised, what exactly does that look like? What does this expenditure look like? And how are we going to strategize in the way that we invest, as well as try to get the best possibility and probability for a good horse syndicate?
Yeah, I mean, look, number one, I've been speaking to Ricardo, the trainer, and he was like, "That James, you can't put me under huge amounts of pressure, right? Even though we do have a target for a really, really good horse right now, there's one or two targets that have already been sourced from Australia. So basically, we will purchase the first horse anywhere between $150,000 to $250,000. Most likely trying to get as close to $100,000 as we possibly can. Then we want to kind of bring him or her over to Singapore. They then have to go through a quarantine period. Generally, from what you can see here, the horse selection, we will be purchasing a 3-year-old. We might get like a 2-year-old, but most likely a 3-year-old. We will then most likely would have won a few races in Australia or be grouped. We'll also be looking at the stallion. We'll be looking at the father. We'll be looking at the mother as well to basically look at the bloodlines. So there's a bunch of tricks of the trade of what the owners and that entire purchasing ecosystem are already kind of looking at in order to try to get the best horse we possibly can. But again, this can take time. Especially that it's most likely a horse from Australia, so there is quarantine and there is time to bring them into Singapore. But then obviously from purchase to race, we would hope that should be within 3 months. Once we've got the first horse and we're paying the training fees, we're paying the stable fees, we're paying all the general costs. This is also going to be a period where we're looking for the second horse and the third horse. So we will actively have our ear to the ground and listening out for the best horses to come that are basically coming to us next. Then we will then purchase the second and third, and then slowly grow the stables. Then obviously the more winners that we get, the more winnings will be distributed. Then potentially later on, 6 to 12 months from now, we will potentially do another race. Maybe we raise some more cash in order to buy, potentially higher valued horses. Even though the general consensus is that we should always be buying a horse of around $100,000 to $150,000. There are risks that you can take. So you can take a slightly higher risk on, say, $500,000 or $1 million horse, but that is no way guaranteed that horse is going to win. So, being a trader, an ex-market trader, I believe going for a slightly lower cost horse and having more runners in different areas is probably the better way to go, rather than pulling a majority of our cash on one larger horse. So I think that we're going to go for a larger stable, and then hopefully, if it's an absolute return model where you've got a bunch of horses, some maybe being placed, some maybe winning, and some maybe not being placed anywhere, but overall we're hoping to be slightly up, and that's the overall, I would say, methodology around purchasing of the horses.
Awesome. Well, that actually does answer a pretty good amount of questions. Thank you for that information. And in fact, actually, another thing just came to mind. Actually, as I was hearing, as I was talking about horse racing, on average, on horse races, how often do you expect the horses to be racing?
I think it really depends on the grouping of where they're grouped and the various different races that are being run. But normally around once per month, I believe, Guy, is normally the cadence of races. Is that right, Guy? Around once per month?
Yeah, that's correct. You aim for about once a month. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So it sounds like to me that once a month is, on average, right? That's really the average or expectation that we were going to look at. So, right. Okay. Uh, well, all right. So sounds like we have a good amount of information on all the reasons why horse integration makes sense, and it seems like there's some opportunity here for a lot of folks to be able to get into this. But obviously, we want part of the value. I know that James, you always talk to me is like we want to make sure we give transparency. We try to be as honest as possible so that way people understand that if there is any kind of inherent risks to these things, which I know you guys have been mentioning already. But I want to kind of go a little more deeper into that because I want to make sure people, before they, in DeFi space, they ape in, right? They're going to ape in to a project. We want to make sure that they know what is it that they're aping into. So I guess before we get into this section and before any investment happen, guys, I want to remind you that any of this is not financial advice. This is just based on our own personal experiences, as well as what we're just sharing with you all. We're not saying you have to do it this way, nor invest in certain ways. So make sure, do your own due diligence. If you never heard of horse indication, go Google it. Trust me, that's what I did. Go look it up and also look at some different races out there. What are the prize pools, and what are the potential earnings. There's a lot of opinions out there, a lot of data out there. So go ahead and look that up and make sure you do your own due diligence. So, okay. With that being said, just to go a little bit more deeper, because I know this is honestly, when I first heard this, one of the things that came to the back of my mind was it's a real horse. It's a living, breathing animal, right? Whereas in DeFi, it's all digital assets, right? And I'm not going to say the word, but I'm going to give it the first letter, which I think everyone knows is everybody knows. It feels like a lot of DeFi is based on the P model, right? The P, and so and why we're doing this way in terms of Fleement and bringing real world assets because it's now going to be on the R model, which we call the revenue model or the value model, V model. And we're trying to make sure that there's revenue being generated and it's based on real world assets that's going to do the work for us. And it's not just simply a pie in the sky kind of deal, which a lot of these projects are. But with that being said, there's some inherent risks of now that it is a real asset, like a horse that's living and breathing, that something could happen to it. Like there could be injuries, or some medically something happen, or let's just say some wild animal got into the ranch and just ate it up, So what if there's any guarantees or insurances out there, or is there anything that would safeguard any of that so that our investment is protected? Is there anything like that? And I suppose that I wanted to kind of throw this question to Guy, since he's the one that's been doing this for a while and as the expert on that. So Guy, if you could speak to that.
Sure. I mean, so the number one risk is obviously injury. And it happens more often than not. You don't often get like career-threatening injuries for the horses, but those are the sort of risks you can insure against, which it's quite costly to do. It's usually a percent of the horse's valuation that you pay. It's 5 to 10% of the total valuation of the horse, and that'll cover you for any career-threatening injuries that they have. Historically, I've never insured horses. I mean, the chance of them getting that and you getting your money back or making that sort of returns low. If you're doing it as a hobby and not sort of as an investment, you understand that risk. And horses typically race from when they're about 2 until they're 8 or 9. So their career is limited. And that's why it can be quite costly for the insurance if you're trying to insure them against injury. And yeah, so historically, I've done it as a hobby for the fun and taken the risk of the injury on board.
Gotcha. Okay. So seems like there is definitely, like, just as, same thing with a car, right? Or same thing with jewelry, or anything else, right? There's possibilities of things happening in the real world. So that's something that we have to address and make sure that, we tell folks this is a possibility, but hence why there's such things called insurance. And as you mentioned, it is quite costly because, I imagine with horses, it's no small matter, right, to insure them. And you gave the number of 5 to 10% of the valuation of the horse. And by the way, that's a yearly thing that you have to pay for, or how does that work?
Yeah, so that would be typically an annual fee.
Hmm.
And if the horse had to get injured, you would just cover up to a percent, like almost the full price of the horse valuation.
Gotcha. Okay. So I suppose it's just keying in on that part where, like you yourself, guy, you don't insure your horses, but as you said, there's a possibility of that. So we definitely wanted to address that. I suppose then it's this, and I'm gonna bring James on back here. Like, so if, let's just say, for instance, we wanted to do insurance, right? Or we want to insure the horse, and the community, the NFT holder says, hey, they want to do that. What would be the way that they'll be able to do that? Because I know you mentioned we're going to use a DAO system to be able to do, like, take voting for something like that. How would that work?
Yeah, so we would be looking to roll out DAO where we're able to vote on certain elements of this process. So let's assume that one of the horses gets injured, there'll be veterinary costs. That's already kind of wrapped up and rolled up in the NFT. As Guy has rightly said, very rarely do horses ever get career-threatening injuries. It's normally almost like when I was playing football, you get shin splints and stuff like that. So I've run through the general kind of injuries. It doesn't really make sense to really insure them. But there are a bunch of other inherent risks. There are risks of, number one, buying a donkey and not a horse, right? So maybe being sold a dud horse that doesn't run or want to run. That's obviously a big risk, right? You're paying $150,000 or $200,000 for a horse that is rubbish. We obviously have the networks, and Guy has the network that he's plugged us into to ensure that we're not getting a donkey, right? We are actually getting a thoroughbred racehorse. So that's another risk. Another risk is jockeys as well. So sometimes the jockeys here, especially in the lower level races, jockeys kind of can work with certain owners, and the owner bets against their own horse because they want to maybe their horse's favourite, and they tell the jockey to hold the horse back, because in these lower level races, that's where there's I met the race stewards and the stewarding system, and how well they watch the jockeys. So people get fined actively if they're trying to fix the races, right?
Yeah, that's
There's also that risk. So there's a risk of, obviously, the horse being a donkey and it just won't run. And then there's a risk that then the jockeys or stuff like that. So and then obviously the injury part. But Singapore government, this is why we housed the horses here as well, is because the veterinary costs are heavily subsidized. So the vets here cost a fraction of the price of what they do in Australia or Dubai or anywhere else, because the Singapore government are actually supporting the overall horse industry in order to ensure that it's sustainable here in Singapore. So that also makes sense to us to be able to use these vets instead of insuring against it. But if there is a big movement, then we are going to create a DAO, and there is going to be voting mechanics. There's going to be voting mechanics around the name of the horse, the silks, so the colors, the design of what the jockeys are going to wear. So there's all this kind of stuff that's going to be put into the DAO, and then of course, if the horse gets injured, and there's variations around that, if everyone decides and comes together and says, hey, I'd like to create a vote around should we get insurance, and the overall syndicate votes for the insurance to be created and set up, then of course it's something that we will execute. But right now, from the overall due diligence and the execution of the wider ecosystem of who I've been speaking to, like Guy, and Guy's connections that he's put me in contact with, the general consensus is that the insurance is generally not required. But let's see what the people prefer.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's so just kind of reiterate that for the folks who are just like saying, hey, for insurance, their concerns on that. It's one of those things where it's not required. It's usually not an option that most owners take. However, for those of us who never done this before and saying, I'm not sure either way, right? In the future, say you could use the DAO system. And if people, like they said, the community says, hey, we want it, we can go and get that set up. The only thing is I suppose then the cost for that, the burden of that, obviously since it's a running cost, it's a continual cost, would have to then would make sense as I know as I had discussion with you, that it would come really from the winnings, right? From the earnings of the horse itself, the winnings of it, because obviously it's as a recurring cost, it needs to come from something that's recurring, right? Because it's sourced from the source of concern, which is during a race it gets injured or training and so on and so forth. So okay, so just so everyone understands, it is an option we can do, and definitely it is viable. But as of right now, we're going to go with the no insurance route, and there's plenty of data that seems to support that is the smart move, at least from a financial standpoint. But again, as time goes on, if there is concerns, we can always put it to the vote. Awesome. So thank you guys so much for really being very transparent. I mean, it was really good, really awesome to be able to address a lot of the inherent risks. Because we definitely want to be the experts on whenever we do say these things, and we want to show that we've done our due diligence, right? So let's make sure, we want to make sure that folks who do invest into it know going full eyes wide open, right? And that at the end of the day, it is all of our investments, right? Not just ours or theirs, but it's all of ours. So, okay. Now here's the part where I am most excited about. I am actually really, really excited because listen, I've been in DeFi and as a DGen, I ate in actually when I first got into DeFi like a couple years ago, and I still have that DGen heart, right? But I've also tempered it back and I've learned how to be a smart investor. But this is the part that really gets me excited, which is the example of what the winning should look like. So actually, if we look here, bring up the slide right now. I've done some research and also the races that you all mentioned, meaning like the Singapore race, like the Kranji Mile, or the Dubai or the Hong Kong races, and I saw their winning pools and even the breakdowns of those winning pools of what would it look like, if they placed even in the top 3, right? And I'm doing the math and I'm going, okay, there's one race average per month, and then we're gonna see like these are the potential winnings. Now remember, folks, just so you remember, as excited as I am and you are, that nothing is guaranteed. There is no guaranteed, and the saying is there's no guarantee in DeFi, but there's also no guarantee in life, right? So we can't guarantee that this is the case. However, I dare to say that like one of our team members said, even if our horse wins one of these, the APR percentages, we like to use APR percentage, go through the roof, right? But essentially, it's a numbers game, it's a probability game. So, anyways, so that in terms of that, that's exciting. And I suppose then, Guy, have you participated in any of these kind of races?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, James mentioned 2 weeks ago, we had a horse, it was second favorite in the Kranji Mile, which was the million sing race. Unfortunately, he went a little bit quick and ended up running 4th, but he still made 40 grand for that, which would cover his full training fees. And his story is, I mean, he came from South Africa. He was a horse that they couldn't even sell on the sales. So I think they ended up giving him to one of the trainers for $5,000. He was undefeated in South Africa. He won 3 Group 3s. And obviously the racing stakes are a little bit lower there. I mean, the top races would probably be, the winning stake would be on 250,000. So we made the decision to bring him out here. And I mean, he's come second in a Group 1, which was the QE2 Cup. He was heavily favored last year for the QE2 Cup, with a 60% chance of winning, and he got injured the week before. So this goes back to like the injuries and the throws, and he's just come back from injury, and he ran in this big race, and he came second in a Group 3, and then first in this Group 1. But yeah, we've had many horses that have entered some of these big races. My dad had a horse called JPEG, which won in Dubai, the $5 million race. And going into the race, he was 66 to 1. So the least favorite horse. He was also a $10,000 acquisition in South Africa that we sent to Dubai. So, I mean, it's possible. You can pick up these amazing horses cheap and win a lot. I think the model that we're taking, and James, is if you got a little bit of a bigger purse and you choose a 3-year-old that isn't overly discovered, but you can see potential, you can definitely target some of these big group races and find gaps like for different age categories and pick something up for 200 where you can actually win this with a reasonably decent probability. It's not like a shot in the dark like it would be for most owners. You're coming in blind and just choosing any old horse.
Gotcha. Man, it makes a lot of sense. That's exciting. That's just to hear that. You know, it's being an owner opens up that beyond just the normally people who are on the stands and just betting, right? Now you can actually benefit and from being a horse owner, it's / hey, as your horse performs well, we all win together. So that's super, super exciting. James, you know, I really, again, appreciate you as CEO and the visionary and saying, hey, we're going to bring in projects like these that are has very good potentials of winnings and earnings. Basically, I know that one of the things you always preach, we go for winners, right? So I really believe that something like this is a winner. So I just want to kind of hand it back to you and just share a little bit about your heart again of like why are we doing projects like these in the first place?
So what we're now looking for is to bring real world assets and opportunities into cryptocurrency. So essentially, Fleamint is the bridge to real world opportunity, and being able to bring these companies or these organizations or these sports syndicates and be able to offer something that's never been offered before in cryptocurrency, i.e. giving the DeFi and the non-DeFi crowd, the wider crypto community, offerings and opportunities that they've never had before by accessing and having an underlying, almost like a traditional world CFD, there's an underlying asset that sits underneath the contract. And that's what we're bringing. We're actually allowing these real world goods, assets and services to be able to bring and infiltrate into cryptocurrency, where cryptocurrency participants are able to take advantage. And you're not just only looking at a coin or a token in an aspect of being a speculative vehicle that has no real background substance. So we're adding that substance by peppering in, for in this instance, a horse that's a real world asset that's going to be running and racing. You can watch, you can track, you can follow, you can come into Singapore, you can watch the races, you can watch them online. There's a website where you can even watch. There's something called trials. So the actual trials is where you'll see the horse training, or it's like a friendly match, but they will then be galloped and raced in these trials. So you can actually watch and you can follow that journey. So it's bringing real world assets, goods and services into the hands of cryptocurrency participants that has never been done before. And I'm super, super excited to bring this first project. There are many, many more to come, but this is the first one, and I'm absolutely super excited to get this off the ground and running.
Perfect. Wow. Super excited, man. As I got on board to this, when I first heard about it, and I was really, really, really excited. At first, I'll be honest, I was a little bit like, oh, I'm not sure if this is is it gonna happen? Is it gonna happen, right? Because I know there's been a bit of wait, and I know our community has been waiting for it. But as more and more I see the internal of what's going on and what's being produced and the different deals that we're signing up. By the way, the Champagne Charlie's just a start, guys. Remember that. I am really, really excited to witness basically the change in the culture of DeFi. And also, to be quite frank with you, I know we talked about this a lot, was the mission of Fleamint was to really revolutionize the world through Web3. So it's not just only DeFi, but also traditional finance and businesses to be able to do this. So super excited about that. I want to thank you, Guy, for being on the show. Appreciate you being here and giving your expertise and insight. And James, thank you so much for working so hard and diligently towards really not only changing the space, but also thinking about all the folks that are in DeFi right now that can definitely benefit from revenue generated from the real world assets. So I just wanted to close it out, guys. Before we close here, I just wanted to give a few reminders. Again, we do have a competition going on that's going to be going on with Champagne Charlie. That if you through our Zeely.io C/Fleement, that if you go ahead and here, I'm going to go ahead and show you here our little onboarding pathway. So that way, everybody can know exactly how do I participate in this. So right here, if you look here, that you go to our Zeely.io/C/Fleement, right? And then from there, if you've never used Zeely before, this is our community board that has access to our Twitter, our Medium articles, our websites, our YouTube, our Discord, and basically is a one-stop shop to be like, hey, how do I make sure that I'm informed as well as connected and engaged? Then when you go ahead and go there, if you don't have an account, make sure to connect. And either you can use your Discord or you can connect your wallet. Make sure I would recommend both, because the way that by the way, guys, you guys have to do your wallet, because the way that we're going to find out who our top 100 folks are that are inviters for this campaign is going to be through your wallet as well as your Discord role. So that way we know who are the whitelist people for that discounted NFT for $1,000 instead of $1,200. And then after that, you authorize it, allow it to access your Discord and whatever else it needs to authorize. Make sure to set up on your account, on your profile, manage your profile, and make sure to connect your Twitter, any other socials on there that it allows you to. And then from there, go ahead and start completing the quest that's on the quest board. So go ahead and make sure to check that out. That's the way to do it. Go to Zeely.io/C/Fleement, okay? And if it's easier, just go to Zeely.io and look for Fleement, and you should be able to join our community. Remember, the key thing is when you invite them, make sure to use your invite code, which is found at the top of that page. It says invite friends. So more details on that on our Discord, as well as our Twitter. So that way we can make sure that you guys are able to qualify for the competition. All right. So yeah, just want to say thank you again. Any other thoughts, any other words to either James or Guy?
No, I'm just super excited to get this moving forward. Any queries, questions, or concerns from the community, please let us know in Discord. We will be happy to answer you. Full transparency from our side. I'm really excited to get our first horse and to start winning. Guy, over to you. Final words.
Yeah, no, I think it's really cool what you guys are doing. It's changing the model, and horse racing generally being a little bit of the older crowd and getting the younger generation in and some fresh blood and enthusiasm. It's really cool.
Perfect. Well, don't miss out, guys. Remember, June 30th is the cutoff date. You don't want to miss it. If you miss a train, you miss a train. All right. So don't miss it though. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell whoever it is that it no longer is DeFi for the memes, right? DeFi is actually now investing into real things, right? Real world. All right, folks. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you guys. Until next time, take care.